Three. We're recording. Welcome back, everybody, to another Epidose of these crazy people who just eat meat and can't stop talking about it. So, anyways, today we're doing another conspiracy show. This one's a little more centered on life extension, immortality, transcendence, that whole sort of genre of what's going on with people, merging with machines. Is this a concept that Hollywood is pushing on us, or are these just popular themes? You know, is immortality just always one of those things we really desire because we're constantly faced with death? So, anyways, I think we're gonna let Corina kick us off. So she's going to start talking about this, and I'm going to share some slides from this side. So hopefully it's not too technically challenging, and hopefully we could tie it into Carnivore. So anyways, why don't you take it away, Corina?
Yeah, okay. So as we are all sitting at home, there is a lot of time to watch Netflix series. But I started this one a while ago, and it's called 100, and it's a series about survival and how people that live actually not on Earth, they send down 100 people to Earth because they think maybe now they can live again on it. And it's a very intricate series, but what's interesting that despite that they are so backwards in their customs, they actually have a lot of technical stuff that they work with and use, far more advanced than what we have right now. And there are 12 clans, and they all follow one commander, and this commander is always chosen as soon as the last one has died. And they say the spirit of one commander goes into the next, and for a long time you have no idea what this is about. But then when you see how the one...
Spoilers, well, maybe.
Yeah. How that one commander dies, you see that actually this commander had an AI implanted into her neck. Hello.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little late. Did you guys start recording? Yes, you did. Oh.
Yeah. So, about this AI. And then there is another cult developing with another AI. It's basically the enemy of all the clans. And they are recruiting people, and those people have just to swallow a AI chip, and then their consciousness is uploaded into the city of light, where they have no pain. So the promise is to live forever and have no pain. But they forget who they are, and then this AI who is conspiring to load up all the minds of all humanity. She just wants to reduce population and thinks that this is the best way to go, and that's her programming, and that's no way around it. So the whole series is about stopping this AI from doing so. And so it's very interesting and very complicated. There are a lot of deaths, but the idea about having your consciousness upload onto an AI and just switch bodies. It's seems to be quite popular in many series. It turns up in different series if you watch on Netflix and everywhere else. So it's very interesting. And then the idea is you need to have a royal blood to be immortal. So, and in the 100, it's called the night bloods. Only those can have the chip. Otherwise, they will be killed by the AI because it will contaminate your system. Yeah, so it's an interesting idea.
So it's a convergence of like a royal bloodline that's lasted presumably for hundreds or thousands of years or something, and then merging with technology. So it's both, right?
Exactly. And then they look, there is another series that you mentioned, Tom, Altered Carbon. And this is also similar. They just use the body as a sleeve, and then they just upload their memories onto several chips. And whenever they need another body, they just switch. And then there is also the difference between the rich and the poor. So only the rich can afford those good bodies, and the poor just get what is around. And then, yeah, they can live forever high up in heaven.
Yeah, and the
And
rich live in
basically
these towers way up
being
in the
gods.
sky, right?
Yeah.
And
So
then,
the idea of those that can live forever are called gods with royal blood. And that's an interesting philosophy. And yeah, it seems to come from Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, that also reminds you of another movie, Surrogates. Have you guys seen Surrogates?
No.
So Surrogates is really interesting. I guess technology came so far. It's kind of like similar to Altered Carbon in that to where they've created these kind of avatars that people go in these pods and get like drip fed nutrients and stuff. And they just live in these pods for as long as they want to. I think at first it was supposed to be recreational, but then there were so many advantages to the robot avatar that you would plug into, similar to a video game, that I think people just started using them as everyday life. And so you have entire, the police department is all surrogates, starring Bruce Willis. But then what's interesting is that, like you said, so there's like the poor and the rich. If you're rich, you have like a really nice, perfect physique, robot avatar, called a surrogate. If you're more poor, then like you kind of have like go down to the pawn shop to get a more older model surrogate. So it's kind of similar in today's society where it's like, well, we really don't see people walking around with iPhone 5s, unless they're really poor or something like that. And it works all buggy, like, it doesn't even log onto the system right anymore. No, everyone's like, a year, maybe 2 years behind, but anything beyond that, and you're kind of really out of the loop, and you start to kind of have a power creep in that, the phone doesn't work as well as it did when you first got it, and nothing compared to the newest model. And so taking that same concept and moving it into avatars that people are actually walking around in. Another interesting, moral idea in it is that you have other groups of people that are completely against the surrogates. So you kind of have a human on human war where it's humans powered by robots. Robots powered by humans, the surrogates, versus regular humans, and just little scuffles and battles, and they live in separate societies. Of course, the non-surrogate people are kind of in the woods, kind of more savage-like, you could say. And then in the surrogate world, you know, everything's all pristine and clean, kind of like Beverly Hills or like a big city. So yeah, very interesting.
In altered carbon, you know, one of the things is if you're really wealthy, you can be backed up all the time. So like you get backed up every day. So if something happens to you, you could be downloaded again right into a new body. And of course, the wealthier you are, the more extra bodies you can have manufactured for you. You don't have to wait around for a secondhand body and stuff like that. So I didn't really get to, I didn't see anything in there about, you know, sacred bloodlines or anything like that, but there were conspiracies and clans and, you know, ancient society type stuff in there. And of course, people lived in towers, you know, way up above the clouds, the really wealthy people, and then everybody else lived on the ground kind of thing. So
yeah, and they also did the cloning, which I found really interesting. So at some point he had this 3D printer, and this is not even conspiracy or fantasy. Actually, people really talk about this. It's very interesting, and it's like a technological resurrection and augmented reality. And basically, you can upload your grandma and let her walk through the kitchen, or so your relatives will never die. And you can still talk with them in the virtual reality.
yeah, there was 2 links I saw to Black Mirror, and this one, Be Right Back, I think, was the one where you could talk to dead relatives.
Yeah, I think so. I remember that one too. That one was pretty good.
And then there was this one, it's still loading. It's it's not the right one. I don't know what happened to that link, but there's one with Miley Cyrus where she's a pop star and her aunt's running her life, and her aunt basically puts her in a coma and then resurrects her as an animated performer, and then her real consciousness winds up in this little robot doll for a while. I don't know if you guys saw that one.
Yeah, I remember that one too. Yeah.
I thought I'd had that link open, but I must have closed it by accident. So
Right. Yeah. And so I guess it's kind of the sinister part. You know, usually when things are talked about, everyone only talks about the benefits, oh, you'll live forever and stuff like that. No one talks about how, you know, you could be imprisoned, you know, and there's other talks about using it for prisoners. So you could put someone in a state and inject their consciousness to where they served like a lifetime in prison, like psychologically and mentally, but actually only like were in prison for one day in reality. Yeah, it gets really interesting.
yeah, an altered carbon, I think it opens with the guy being put back in a body, and he'd basically been in prison for 300 years or something like that. And they can, when you're imprisoned and disembodied, you can be in some sort of virtual jail or even be tortured. I think there's a lot of this like virtual torture that goes on in that show. So
They just can enter this virtual reality and then be attached to some technology, and then they can really be tortured and everything, and that's
Corina,
how.
did you want to say something else about this YouTube video, the technical resurrection, or do you want me to go to the next one?
We can go to the next one.
Okay. Can you guys see that? Mad scientist.
Oh, yeah.
So this is, as I say, it's not science fiction and it's not conspiracy. It's really fact that some people, the transhumanists, they start talking about this. They think the 3D printing, what you see in the Altered Carbon series, they really think that at some point you can do this. You can print a body.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that, but somebody 3D printed a human heart, and it's miniaturized, and it's in a little cube full of fluid, but it actually pumps. They've got wires hooked up to it, and it actually pumps. So, yeah, and there's this whole. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the extracellular matrix. So there's like structures in our body that are kind of made of like a cartilage material. So like they give the form to, like, let's say your kidney or your nose or whatever. So they could 3D print with that extracellular matrix, and then they just keep bathing it in stem cells. And then the living tissues, the cellular tissues form on the extracellular matrix. So if you can believe it. So. All right. This is Elon Musk wants to hook your brain directly to the computers. I think we've got a couple of different links regarding this. What did you want to say about it, Corina?
Yeah, well, he has the similar idea, like this. The other link was about the guy who actually was in Davos, and he's called Istvan, Sultan Istvan or something like this.
Sultan Istvan, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was actually in Davos talking about this, and we all know who goes to Davos. It's all the rich people, and also angry Greta was there.
Of course.
So
it's a celebrity mascot.
It's all linked at the green movement and being vegan. This Zoltan, he also talks about meatless meats, and this is his idea, and combine this with technology. And I don't know if Elon Musk was the one who said, if we don't do that in the future, we will be like pets to an AI. So they believe that actually the AI is much more intelligent than a human brain, and that they will beat us at some point. And that's why they think we should combine.
If I could kind of like paint an opposing picture, I would say probably the pinnacle of hominid evolution would be the Cro-Magnon, right? This is the tallest, healthiest, strongest, most robust human form. Probably, the largest brain capacity, so probably the highest capacity for intelligence. And quite clearly, even with a pronounced jaw, quite clearly they primarily just ate meat, right? And so I wonder, I think, if we were trying to get to the best human form, the healthiest, smartest, most robust human form, we would want to go in that direction. But it seems with all these people pushing a plant-based agenda, maybe they're just trying to force a new evolution to see which genes could possibly survive on a plant-based diet, right? So maybe they're like, oh, in the future, we're just going to barely have bodies. We're going to feed them algae and pea protein or whatever, soy. And so what we'll do is we'll kind of cull the herd, and all the people with the genes and the bodies that just can't adjust to the plant proteins and the plant fats and the excess carbohydrates are just going to die off. And then at some point after, a million years of this, we're going to finally get some either genetically altered people that can survive on these diets, or maybe will force some sort of mutation?
Yeah, who knows? But I think we would de-evolve again. We would go backwards. And it's funny that you mention those green foods, like they did that in the 100s. They cultivated the algae and they lived from that until they ran out of it, and then they turned into cannibals because there was no other option at some point. It's again a spoiler, but they had to actually organize some fighting pits, and those that died in those fighting pits, they were used as nutrition for everybody else, so they could save humanity. And they had to force themselves to eat their friends, basically, or their family, whoever died.
Great.
And that's an interesting concept. It's either algae or cannibalism, but they never mention going back to hunting.
Right.
That's never mentioned.
There's no talk of regenerative agriculture.
Mm.
Little too sciencey for a science fiction show. So what caught your eye about the this Robert Seffer Atlantean Gardens video on the black cube and the ancient goddess?
Well, it's about it used to be the matriarchy, and there are still some tribes, or the Berbers or the Tuareg, and they worshipped the female side. It was a matriarchy, so and it was very different. And also some pagans actually worshipped Mother Earth, so it was the female side. And it's a completely different way of looking at things. It's not conquering, but being in harmony. And we have lost it completely. And I think regenerative agriculture is the only method that maybe goes back to that worship of Mother Earth, or at least living in harmony and not destroying it. And where we are at this point, it's using everything that is here and destroying it. And even the green energy is not so green. And I started watching Michael Moore's movie that is at this moment still on YouTube available. And he is pro climate change, and we all don't believe into this myth, but he got it right in terms of that the green energy is not so green. So you see how they are still using other types of energy because the green energy is not enough. So this whole idea, it doesn't work. And everybody's pushing it. You see Arnold Schwarzenegger, who put so much money into the solar systems. There is also some footage how the solar system actually lasts for a few years, and then it's finished, and then it's like a desert again, all destroyed. And so all this mining that they had to do to get those solar panels up, it was for nothing, so it didn't last. And yeah, so my point with this ancient goddess video, it's interesting how it seems that all those that worshipped the matriarchy, they got overpowered by and corrupted by some people that didn't want them to exist.
Yeah, if I had to circle back to conspiracies and the ancient goddess, I think that is one of the things that's been going on behind the scenes. Is there's always been people that worship goddesses, you know, all the way back to Tiamat, which is sort of like a symbol of the chaos in the beginning before creation, or even the blackness from which the light originally came. And from that, you know, there's been a continuous line of goddess worshipers that have always existed. And there's, you know, been the sun goddess, and, you know, Diana, and on and on and on. There's been tons of them, and they there's the gender struggle. So you got male gods, and then you got like the sun god, or the sun goddess, as opposed to the black goddess, you know, the thing that existed before there was even light, right? The chaos from which creation. So, and that's why you know, to this day, you go to some of the Catholic cathedrals and you'll see Black Madonna, or you've got the Black Kali, or the Kaaba, the Black Q. All that stuff is a very ancient form of worship that changes gender, changes name, and that's always competing with whoever's on top, right? And I think that's where we get all this cult and occult mysticism, is people were practicing these religions in the dark. You know, you know, one time they were undercover as alchemists or oculists, or they were in some sort of brotherhood or whatever. But I think that behind the scenes, that's kind of what's been going on. It's been a battle between these different religions that get subjugated, whether they're polytheistic versus monotheistic, male versus female, old versus new, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on, because I see the little thumbnail there for the Joe Rogan and Tim Pool, they were talking about, well, to dovetail about genes and the people that, you know, trying to get a more plant-based human, you know, they were talking about some conspiracy theories, and I don't think either of them actually believe this, but how a theory that we have to become less aggressive and more together and more kind of communistic or one world government, so that we can be allowed into some kind of intergalactic federation. Because
so just to clarify, there's some sort of like belief out there that some government officials or something are in contact with aliens. There's a galactic society out there, but we can't join it until we have a one world government, right? Is that kind of what the
right,
idea is?
yeah, that's the idea, is that there are government officials in contact with extraterrestrial beings, and that they're giving the orders that, hey, you better get your planet to calm its tits, otherwise you're not going to get invited to the party, basically. Again, totally unfounded, but
Yeah.
it's interesting. And then it's like, well,
It's amusing,
okay,
but it's awful hard to believe.
right, yeah. And then, you know, so similarly of how we went from wolves and domesticated wolves to dogs, you know, to the modern poodle, let's say, there could be a push, if true, to go from, you know, the modern man, like you said, which one is it, the strongest, you said, and possibly most intelligent?
Cro-Magnon.
So yeah, so probably from Cro-Magnon to something more like what's known as the Greys, the Gray aliens. You know, they're genderless, they're very skinny, very thin. They have big brains. I guess they're super intelligent. I mean, if the idea that they can make it here and we can't make it there, you know. But carnivore, you know, and I would have totally like swallowed all that hook, line, and sinker, except for carnivore now, because I'm like, I'm not sure how you get strong brain power without meat in a biological being. So going carnivore has really tripped me out on my own theories of the future and things like that. Another thing too, there was an anime that I liked that was on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on or not, called Knights of Sidonia, and it took place in space. And you know, like one of those you know, last vestige of humanity trying to find a new planet kind of deal. And the way that they would survive in space, because they didn't have, you know, the recycling technology down pat. Yeah, everything is recycled, but it's hard to get enough nutrients daily, is that they splice their genes to where they could photosynthesize, so they could actually get nutrients from the sun, similar to plant species. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I think if we were going to do space travel long distances, that would be the only way to secure food, would be to splice with plants to photosynthesize.
I guess green will be the new black.
Yeah.
So, all right. Did you want to tell us about this? They died so we can live, Corina?
Yeah, this is what I was talking about before. It shows how the leader of that bunker clan
Is
that
this
had
from the
to
100?
survive for 6 years in the bunker. When they ran out of plants, they had to eat their own.
This is
And
from the 100 TV show.
yeah, from the 100, yes.
Okay.
And at gunpoint, the leader had to force everybody at gunpoint to start eating human flesh.
Wow. I don't know.
And
A
this
little
is just
barbecue
a
sauce might have
scene.
gone a long ways. Just saying.
And everybody was totally traumatized by this. And they called it the dark year because this had to happen.
And how about this one? This one's corporate psychopaths.
Yeah, so this ties into how they overthrow the governments whenever they see that a country has some resources, if they want it. They send economic hitman there to persuade somebody to invest into some infrastructure or whatever, and they give them a loan, and the country is usually poor and they can never pay it back. So that's how they say, okay, then give me oil, give me soldiers or whatever. And that's how they basically overpowered one poor country after another. And the problem is that the corporate psychopaths, they don't care. They have no empathy. They are ruthless. They are highly manipulative, and they have no conscience. They don't care as long as they get what they want. They will do it, and that's the problem. And a lot of psychopaths are actually working in such corporations, and that's why we are where we are.
So, and does that tie into the ancient bloodlines and antediluvial civilizations at all?
I just want to take one moment that actually in one of my psychotherapy classes when I was going through training, one of my professors said that the heads of all the major corporate, entities are, roughly 50% sociopaths. So there's a good chance, just
50%.
yeah, roughly
Wow.
50%. I don't know where that number came from specifically, but that I don't remember where he got it and stuff. But that is I guess you would call it an assumption at this point. But if there's any research behind that,
Yeah.
I'm not
Possibly
100%
there
sure.
is, because there is Robert Hare, and he wrote a checklist for psychopaths, and he did that by going to prisons and basically doing research on the psychopaths that were in prisons, and then he also expanded that on other beings, like male and female people, and there is that checklist, so you can see whenever somebody scores 40 points out of 40, there are like 40 questions, and if he or she scores like 35, that's really bad news. That's so maybe they have checked everybody for psychopathy, those corporations, and so they know who is high on the list,
Yeah,
possibly.
I think
And
most of
that's
it was like they did external evaluations of these people. Yeah, it's real common for them to be psychopathic, have psychopathic tendencies. That's how they got to the top. That's how they pushed this company through,
yeah. And some companies, they actually hire people. I don't know if it's still true, but some companies actually hire people who score high on the list. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
because they are ruthless and they will do everything. They are high risk takers. So that's what a company values. It's so
Well, yeah,
weird.
I mean, you typically hire somebody who's accomplished things, and so, maybe it's in the nature of those people that accomplish these big things that they are ruthless. And, we hear, a lot of these people that had these multinational corporations are like, yeah, we're not particularly loyal to the United States. We're loyal to our shareholders, so they have to have that sort of at all costs we promote ourself in the form of a corporation, right?
yeah. And I just want to put a little caveat here, if possible, that, let's not forget that corporation is a legal entity bestowed upon, applied for and then bestowed upon by the government. And so I feel like people sometimes get confused between a big business and then a corporation, because every corporation at one time was a mom and pop something or other. It may have morphed over time. Like even Walmart, Walmart started out as just a small general store before it became the behemoth that it is now. Not excusing anything that it does in its current form, but there's a lot more than just they have psychopaths, they push it through, and then it just works. There's a lot more back stuff, government and corporate together, that I
Yes,
think
exactly.
leads to that situation.
Mm.
The premier person that wrote the book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins, actually worked for the CIA, right, Corina?
I think it was the other one, the NDA.
Oh, the NDA. Okay, that's right.
It was the other, not CIA.
Oh, anyway, a government organization though, right?
Yes, it
Yeah,
was one of those three.
right. And so he was actually told by the government to go and do an economic hitman
Yes, but he
And
was actually employed by a company. Because if somebody from the government would do it, that would be, you know, they cannot, they prefer to send somebody from a company to do their dirty work, basically.
right, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I this is one of the YouTube videos that I want to throw in here. I don't know how many people remember Enron commercials. And of course, Enron was this company, supposedly an energy company, right? And they had this guy in a metal suit, obviously has like a human head, right? But he kind of seems like a cyborg, but they kind of present it as like he's trapped in a metal suit, like there's padlocks on it holding him in there. But I thought it was interesting because it was really like this guy is just lumbering around and he's sort of sad and sort of restrained and everything. And this they do this whole weird thing in these commercials is that they say, why ask why? And you know, why is the most important question, and Enron is the new thing. And then we come to find out that Enron was just a giant scam, and they were so good at just cooking the books and moving stuff around and making it look like there was something profitable here that the government regulators didn't even catch on, right? And it was an insider that said, what are you talking about? So here's a company that blew up so big they had TV commercials that talked about nonsense, right? And essentially saying we're so great, and why ask why? And you know, we're gonna set you poor people trapped in metal suits free or something. And but I had to wonder. I said, was this sort of a cyborg sort of symbol here? It's like a human head on a metal body, just kind of lumbering around. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting um, from a lot of standpoints. Nonetheless, what's the message they delivered was exactly the opposite of what they were doing. So.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but again, it's like technology merging with the human brain. I don't know.
So we have to talk about Ray Kurzweil. Pretty amazing guy. You know, he's the guy who invented the Kurzweil keyboards, the synthesizers, arguably some of the most technologically advanced of their kind. I heard a story that he actually was sitting on a plane next to Stevie Wonder one time, and Stevie Wonder was telling him about what the experience of being blind. And he said, you know, one of the big problems is not being able to read printed material like everybody else, because stuff's not just, you know, if there's a magazine around, you know, it may not be available for blind people in any form, right? Like it's not in braille or audiobook or anything. And so Ray Kurzweil was like, he developed a scanner that would turn text to speech, right, based on that conversation. So, and he's done a lot of these miraculous things. And I do believe now he's some sort of department head at Google. It's the first time actually, I think, working for someone else in a long time. But he has this concept that machines will probably become smarter than humans by about 2045. So roughly 25 years from now, he theorizes that computers will be able to design better computers, right? So they'll be progressively getting smarter and smarter and smarter. And of course, we've got robots now that really aren't any smarter than a cockroach. Like you can't get a robot to walk in a room and do anything more complicated than um, find a coffee mug, you know, sitting on a table. That's like a big challenge. I mean, you could program robots to do stuff, right? They've got these robots in Japan that they're designing to help take care of people, you know, get people in and out of bed when they're elderly or disabled or whatever. And we've got assembly lines full of robots that are programmed to build cars and assemble things, you know, all that stuff. But they can't really think for themselves. They can't really design new things. You know, they can't come up with new ideas very well. So Ray thinks that will all change by about 2045. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, speaking of 2045, there's an entire initiative called the 2045 initiative, which is to completely plan, redo society. And it pretty much takes everything we've been talking about and really pushing for it. So it's the founder, the Russian entrepreneur is Dmitry Ishkov, and he founded it in 2011. And anyone can go to their site. You don't have to pay to see their site or anything like that. And they actually have a little YouTube video, and yeah, that's the site. And the little YouTube video is kind of disturbing. I mean, you know, with I think all these movements and all these people, it's like, yeah,
video right here.
a new era for humanity. Is that they always start out painting this picture of we're doomed, we're completely doomed, you know, we're overpopulated, we're destroying the earth, not going to be able to feed people, like the complete and total catastrophe scenario in all aspects of our life. And then, you know, they have the answer. That's why you need to, you know, invest or work on, you know, the 2045 project. And it's like, well, what if things aren't really that bad? You know what I mean? And if this stuff is more like rich toys, you know, is that really so bad? So the 2045 project is just that. It's building the new humanity. So it has some goals, and I'll read out these goals, and it'll sound very familiar to what we've been talking about. And I'll be quite honest, it kind of seems like they've run a bit behind, which for better or worse. So this was supposed to be for the year 2015 to 2020. We're now in 2020, so keep that in mind. The emergence and widespread use of affordable Android avatars controlled by a brain-computer interface coupled with related technologies. Avatars will give people a number of new features, abilities to work in dangerous environments, perform rescue operations, travel in extreme situations, etc. Avatar components will be used in medicine for the rehabilitation of fully or partially disabled patients, giving them prosthetic limbs, or recover lost senses. So where's your avatar, guys? Is yours in the shop?
Mine melted down at Fukushima. I was
You were
in there
helping
trying to
with
steal
that?
pieces of the core. Didn't work out.
So yeah, I haven't seen anybody walking around in any kind of avatar. I haven't heard anything about it on the news. We're clearly in the middle. I mean, unless they're pumping out, you know, here in August on my birthday, I might be able to grab up a little avatar. But yeah, like I said, I think they're a bit behind. And that idea is kind of like the Surrogates movie, you know, this avatar. So that's just the start, though. There's more. So from now, 2020 to 2025, creation of an autonomous life support system for the human brain linked to a robot avatar will save people whose body is completely worn out or irreversibly damaged. Any patient with an intact brain will be able to return to a fully functioning bodily life. Such technologies will greatly enlarge the possibility of hybrid bioelectric devices, thus creating a new IT revolution, and will make all kinds of superimpositions of electronic and biological systems possible. So basically, they're going to put your brain in a jar at the old days. And so Ray Kurzweil, I believe, one of his dreams is, or his plan is to never die. Am I right?
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yes.
Thinks he's got a good shot at it anyways.
So I think this is part of his plan to live forever, is to just have his brain in some kind of fluid or whatever, and then walk around in one of these
Is this one of those things where the Simpsons predict the future again?
I think so, possibly.
I'm not sure I want to be a brain in a jar, but
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how far they're into that, but yeah, you'll have your own little avatar there, have your little brain in the jar. I mean, I guess you got to make sure no one steals it. But I mean, you know, if they have the technology going and all this stuff, why wait till you're near death?
Right.
Why not just, hey, you know, plug me in. I'm ready now, you know? So then we go to the 2030 to 2035. Creation of a computer model of the brain and human consciousness with the subsequent development of means to transfer individual consciousness onto an artificial carrier. I think that's a really complicated way to say like a thumb drive, I'm guessing. This development will profoundly change the world. It will not only give everyone the possibility of cybernetic immortality, but will also create a friendly artificial intelligence, expand human capabilities, and provide opportunities for ordinary people to restore or modify their own brain multiple times. The final result at the stage can be a real revolution in the understanding of human nature that will completely change the human and technical prospects for humanity. So that one, I only really understood half of it. You know, they're talking about you can be to change your rebuild your brain multiple times. I don't even know what that would mean, what that would look like. Do you guys have any ideas?
Well, I think that, you know, if somewhere in here we have to realize that we die because we have two problems. We have programmed cell death, which is a good and a bad thing, and also that our repair mechanisms slowly stop repair, you know, don't repair our bodies as well as they could, right? So I think the idea being that even the thought processes have to be reordered, you know, at times. Like, you know, let's say eventually with time, you're eventually going to go insane. So you've got to be able to recover from that insanity. Just like you might have to defrag a hard drive. I mean, we used to do that manually all the time, and now they kind of do it behind the scenes automatically, right? So it might come down to just the processes, or it might come down to reordering the information itself, you know, reestablishing connections. So
I see.
So,
Go ahead, Corina.
well, I just think the obsession with immortality in general, it has been going on for a very, very long time. And even the Chinese, they went from nature, they tried to actually strengthen the human body with qi. So there is that long tradition about the qi and how you improve your health and everything. So I think they had the right approach, but then we kind of went a completely different direction, and now what you see is more a development of technology, plus that it doesn't matter what you eat. So the Chinese were very much about doing good exercise like Qigong, Tai Chi, that would strengthen your Qi. And then also go about it with food, eating the proper nutrition and herbal treatment and whatnot. And what you see in those movies and all those that talk about the transhumanism, they try to achieve that with technology and basically replacing the human body with other stuff that
like
So
technology and stuff.
that's in the end, it doesn't matter what you eat. So that's why they can push the plant-based agenda.
Right. I mean, you don't have to care about your health if you're going to get diabetes at age 45, if you can
Yeah,
get
you
a new
just change your
body
body.
at age 55. Yeah, no, it's 100% true.
But I mean,
Yeah.
if you get Alzheimer's, you know, even if you're an Alzheimer's victim and your brain in a jar, you're still an Alzheimer's victim, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if they're able to rebuild the consciousness to, you know, fill in those
Yeah,
missing gaps.
Yeah, if you can upload, you know, if you know you have Alzheimer's, it takes a while until you are really bad. But then you can maybe, the idea is to upload your consciousness before you go nuts.
Yeah, and I think Elon Musk's project with Neuralink, the idea is they're literally going to drill holes in your head with a laser, insert fibers into the brain. I think that was like 400 connections, 800 connections, and the idea in the beginning is to deal with disease. You know, I mean that's what and so I often wonder, is it going to be, you know, disease and disease prevention or treatment? I mean, we talk about transhumanism and adding technology to the body. We already have pacemakers, defibrillators, people, they put stents in people's arteries, people have continuous glucose monitors, insulin
Pain
pumps.
medication, the pain monitors also,
Yeah,
pain
pain
pumps. Yeah.
medication. And then I know it's experimental, but they've actually plugged cameras into the brains of blind people, you know, as tests. You know, I don't think it's something that's available. And of course, we've seen prosthetic limbs getting more and more developed. You know, some of them are sort of passive. They're not really, you know, they're not electronic devices and stuff like that, but some of them are, particularly like hands and stuff like that. So I've got to
And, you know,
wonder.
we've had cochlear implants forever for the deaf, and there's actually a debate in the deaf community on whether or not that is right, because there's some people in the deaf community that feel that they're fine just the way that they are, and that they see it as an offense to want to change them or cure them. So there's that aspect too.
Just like a lot of people in the autistic community.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking the same.
Yeah, don't suggest that anybody needs to be cured or helped or anything like that, you know.
Yeah, I think that's everybody needs to decide that on a personal level.
Well, and let's face it, when it came to growing the internet, I mean, what really drove it was adult entertainment. And you got to wonder if that's what's gonna what's gonna happen with transhumanism, whether you're in a pod in a virtual world or you're designing a human-like robot for companionship. What's really going to drive it? You know, is it going to be um, people who are diseased and need some sort of new part added to them, or is it going to be able-bodied people who want
A
they
new
want
kink.
and yeah, they're going to order some sort of robotic companion with perhaps some sort of kinky options uploaded to it or something, you know.
Well, in Japan, they kind of have like a little anime girl that you could link up with your house and your little computer and stuff like that that will greet you when you get home. That's a little hologram that just sits there on your desk. Yeah.
Really?
And then what was it? Not Running Man, that movie that just got the remake like a couple years ago. Blade Runner 2041, I believe
Yeah.
what it was called. How the main character had that upgrade for his digital wife or whatever so that she could move about the whole city instead of just stuck in the apartment.
Yeah.
And what you also see, they in all those movies, they use some kind of drugs. mood enhancers, or in one movie it was called a virus, an empathy virus and stuff like that. So they have like advanced medication or drugs that help them feel better. So possibly it will be like everything combined, you know, the promise of being free of pain and happy and traveling wherever you want, but not having to go anywhere, just wearing this screen, like the virtual reality. But what they shared with Microsoft, it was a total flop with that, what's her name? Abramovich. It was
The commercial, right?
Yeah, but the idea was that people could wear that thing and then be with her in one room, and she would somehow explain her art or whatever. I don't know what the idea was, but it was a total flop.
Well, yeah, I mean, we haven't had very good luck so far. Like Google Glass, have you heard anyone buy one? Any news on that? You know, that was supposed to pretty much be an interface in your glasses, in your lenses, you know, and it could actually like scan people. It's supposed to do all kinds of off the hook stuff. And I'm not saying that we're going to get there. I'm not going to get there. It's just, man, these timelines are, I think, way off. To develop these things are way more difficult. And if we're already behind on Google Glass, I mean, I think we might be even like 100 years away from anything close to understanding and injecting and moving our consciousness around. But hey, I could be surprised. I think breakthroughs come in huge waves, you know, don't always see them coming.
Yeah.
And then, so I just want to finish off the 2045 initiative. So 2045, this is the time when substance-independent minds will receive new bodies with capabilities far exceeding those of ordinary humans. A new era for humanity will arrive. Changes will occur in all spheres of human activity: energy generation, transportation, politics, medicine, psychology, sciences, and so on. Today, it is hard to imagine a future when bodies consisting of nanobots will become affordable and capable of taking any form. So they're talking about not having a hard body, but a nanobot, a body made of individually controlled nanobots. And in the movie that they show, someone turns into like an angel and flies up into the air. It's really crazy. Body hologram, let's see, it's hard to imagine body hologram featuring controlled matter. One thing is clear, however, humanity for the first time in its history will make a fully managed evolutionary transition and eventually become a new species. Moreover, prerequisites for a larger scale expansion into outer space will be created as well. And key elements: international social movement, social network, immortal.me, charitable foundation, global future 2045, scientific research center, immortality, business incubator, University of Immortality, annual award for contribution to the realization of the project of immortality. So these guys are full on. They want to go political, social, you know, the whole thing. And right now you have a $10 million X Prize aim for robot avatars that let you see, hear, and feel by 2021. So obviously the great minds that they got working on this, apparently it's not going so well. So they're throwing some money out there for some outside help. So if anyone needs 10 million and have a design for an avatar, there you go. You can.
Well, let me ask you, seeing how that there's like an X Prize or whatever for that, that's not just Hollywood, right? And where does that money come from to encourage people to put teams together and try and come up with technology that they can compete with?
Yeah, so I tried looking for donors and funding sources for 2045, and I couldn't really come up with anything. So if anyone out there better sleuths than me can look for funding, who's funding it? I mean, you know, it has the main guy who's a billionaire, but he can't be funding everything on his own with just as a billionaire. I think even that's a stretch. So yeah, I mean, if not now, when? Governments would obviously get involved, military applications. Are we going to see that Terminator future? Crazy.
Yeah, and that's how much of this is what's really going to happen, and how much of this is Hollywood. I mean, because we think about it, like you brought up Blade Runner. I know that came out when I was a kid, and I thought I had a picture of it, but it didn't come up. But did you guys see Buck Rogers ever from like?
I never watched it, but I saw the little
It
picture of
sounds
it that you
familiar.
had.
Yeah, so there was a little robot guy named Tweaky, and he carried around another guy that seemed like a disembodied human intelligence inside of a little machine named Dr. Theopolis, right?
Hmm.
And that was a cheesy TV show. It had to be made in like the 70s or something. And then, like I said, Blade Runner, there's a lot of avid fans out there of Philip K. Dick, and it was a mind-blowing movie of its time, and the idea was that these replicants were manufactured, and most of them had a relatively short lifespan, but some of them didn't. Some were kind of experimental. And in the book, as I recall, like some of them, like you could control your mood, like you could adjust, your happiness, or whatever. And a lot of them, it stopped feeling real because they had like direct control over their feelings, and so they'd make themselves feel sad or angry or whatever, just to feel real again. So they sort of get lost. um they kind of lose the pleasure in life, and the sense of being a real person, um because they have too much direct control over how they feel and stuff like that. It became too artificial. It's like being in a artificial environment and just getting tired of it.
Mm.
Yeah, we may not be able even to adjust. There's another theory that you'll have all the hippies and pro-Earth people stay on Earth, and then the people that want to leave, they'll get in these avatars or whatever, just build themselves a spaceship and leave. And then the rest of us will just be here on Earth, and it'll be like, well, that was weird, but yeah, let's just keep eating and kicking it here on Earth.
So what do we think is really going to happen? I mean, are we, obviously we're not going to be able to just be merged with machines right away. I mean, there's different ideas, like the human brain has billions of connections going on in there, right? So to copy all that, they've talked about, when you die, they freeze your brain, then slice it, scan it, and reconstruct that in a model, in a computer model, and then try and make a living sort of organism in the computer from that. But that seems far-fetched. There doesn't seem to be any way to put billions of probes into somebody's brain. So how do you upload a consciousness? And then we've never answered the question, what is consciousness?
Exactly. And even if the Elon Musk and those people are asked what is consciousness, that they cannot answer it. Nobody knows it because it has not been found.
Yeah, it's kind of a subjective concept, to be honest with you.
Mm.
What really does make you sentient? I mean, we could write a few little rules out here. It's like certain people, or they're always ascribing sentience to animals and stuff like that, wondering if plants have it, but that literally gets too deep in the weeds. But I mean, what does it mean? It seems to me like we're a long ways off. We're a long ways off. We're probably doing better understanding our own existing biomechanical systems and extending our lives just through improving the human body's repair mechanism, so we are melding with technology. I mean, we're always going to get a new cochlear ear implant, something like that, a pacemaker, perhaps a little pharmacy that for people who have different disorders, maybe something for Parkinson's disease will be implanted. I mean, they implant all kinds of different birth control, right? Both mechanical and chemical birth control. You can regulate the heart. You could probably stimulate other things, clean things. Have you guys ever seen those things that catch blood clots? They're made out of
No.
wire, and they
Mm-mm.
insert them. So basically what it keeps like a blood clot or, you know, tissue or whatever from traveling through an artery and going to a critical place. It's basically a catch. You know, they put those in. Of course, there's recalls on that stuff too. You know, just like hernia meshes and bladder repairs and all that stuff. You know, they put a lot of foreign materials in people to try and put them back together, and then a few years
Or
later they're taking them
joint
out.
replacements.
What's that?
Sorry, joint replacements.
Joint replacements, hips, knees, very common. And some of those have failed and had to be replaced, you know. So
Yeah,
but
it's
they get better.
interesting that it's always like replacing it with technology, but never actually asking the question, how can it be prevented? I
Or
mean,
how
we
yeah.
in the carnivore community, we know already how it can be prevented or reversed. But there is that strong movement towards technology and not looking or not even wanting to look into the other direction. It's interesting.
Yeah, it seems like we prematurely age and we don't know it. Like, you know, premature aging is been normalized, and a lot of that just comes from our diet, from eating fake food, seed oils, excessive carbohydrates and starches and all that stuff. You know, getting cavities. This isn't normal. It's like, I mean, look at how much technology goes into dental work, mostly replacing teeth that have gotten holes in them. The enamel's been worn off, and that's mostly because of diet. And
Or you get drunk and slammed your face on a concrete when you were 16.
there's that too. That
Yeah.
alcohol does account for a lot of human suffering. There's no two ways about it. And it's not a health food.
Depends on who you ask.
Depends on who you ask, right? Well, I suppose.
Mm.
Well, anyways, you guys take your parting shots, and we'll have to wrap this one up. I've got to get back to earning a living. So
I thought you could just have your avatar do it.
I wish.
So yeah, so if Dmitry Iskavov, if he would like to donate to the channel or either of us, he's welcome to. We will, you know, be 100% on board with the 2045 project. We will shill it. We will try to get as many people on board as possible. You know, you're giving away 10 million. Come on, you could throw 1, 2, 5 million our way. Little small channel. You know, we'll put it to good use. We promise.
We promise. Probably going to buy a few steaks with that. But, you know. Corina, you got anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, well, so back to the Cro-Magnon, I had some interesting link there. The obsession with ancient bloodlines, and are the Basques descendants of the Cro-Magnon? And yeah, who knows? They don't know who where they came from. And why this is interesting, it goes back to the Rh negative bloodlines. And Hitler talked about the Rh positive blood being from a superior race, and wanted to wipe out anyone who carried the Rh negative genes. And the Jews have a high percentage of Rh negative blood. He felt inferior to Rh negatives because he was amazed at the intelligence they showed above his more easy to control and less bright superior race.
We don't have any actual scientific evidence to show that Rh negative people are more intelligent.
Yeah, we don't know that, but it's really I find that
Hitler
fascinating.
believed it. So.
Yeah. So and Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels specifically wanted to exterminate the Scottish Highlanders, the Britons, Basques, Slavs. Sorry, and checks. Apparently they have Rh negative blood. I don't know if that is true, but I think that's it's interesting because it goes back again to the that obsession of blood, of bloodlines. You even find that in the Harry Potter series, where they talk about the pure bloods who come from ancient families, and then the mud bloods who have been mixed with humans.
Yeah, and I gotta say, you know, from the onset, this whole thing about bloodlines and stuff sounds ridiculous, you know, and it's like, and then you start realizing that, oh, geez, this stuff is woven through history, it's woven through religion, it's woven through literature, and it's like, really, you know, you would think, some of these things, you know, at some point, everybody go, geez, it's ridiculous, because almost everybody on the planet is a freaking hybrid now. You
Yeah,
got little.
absolutely. I totally agree. But you see how these mostly rich people, and again in those series, it always comes up again and again, and there is this obsession
Do you think that's
of these
because
rich people
they want
who somehow just think there is a pure bloodline, which I don't think it exists anymore.
do you
If
think it's
it
because
had,
they want to feel special? Is that what it is? It's like,
yeah,
I'm rich
possibly.
and powerful, but I don't feel special unless I think I have special blood or something.
Yeah, the superior race who has the royal blood. It's always the same, which gives them the permission to act in a way, you know, and treat everybody else as if they are inferior, and do what they want. And there are no rules for those people. I think maybe that's
Yeah, definitely. There
privilege.
seems like they need an excuse to hand down power to their descendants,
Mm.
essentially. And maybe that's the real magic, is just, it's a concept. It doesn't hold any water. It's not really true. It's certainly not scientific, but if you get enough people to believe in it, it keeps on going.
Yeah, yeah.
That's probably what's at the bottom of it. So, anyways, I better wrap this up. And I want to thank you guys for joining me. I hope people out there find it interesting. I hope it makes things a little clearer for other people. So leave us your comments, and you know, subscribe to the channel. It really helps when people subscribe, and pass the link on to other people who find it interesting. And feel better. Eat some meat and feel better. Don't sign up for that transhumanism implant anytime soon. I don't think they're FDA approved yet. So
Yeah.
And don't fall
Just
down the
eat meat.
carb hole.
go ahead, Corina. What'd you say?
Yeah, just eat meat and be happy.
There you go. Just eat meat and be happy, which means don't fall down the carb hole.